Welcome to Sleepy History Stories. Before we begin, take a slow breath and settle into a warm, comfortable space. And if you want to help the channel grow and be part of our calm little community, feel free to comment where you are watching from, what time it is right now, and what your thoughts are as you drift off. Your comments truly help others find this video, and I appreciate every one of you. As the steady crackle of the fire begins to settle your thoughts, let the glow of the embers slow everything down. Imagine the soft, golden light filling a quiet room, making the walls shimmer gently, almost like the past itself is breathing around you. Tonight we travel more than 3,000 years back in time, into the heart of the late Bronze Age. A world filled with powerful kingdoms, warm seaports, stone palaces, and thriving trade networks that connected distant lands. Egypt along the Nile, the Hittites rising across Anatolia, the Mycenaeans high in their fortified citadels, Canaanite cities strung along the Levant like beads of light, Cyprus, the fading Minoans, and many others whose stories echo softly through archaeology. It was a world full of confidence and complexity. Ships moved across calm seas filled with copper, tin, glass, and spices. Scribes pressed tiny wedge symbols into clay tablets to record letters between kings, shipments of goods, and alliances sealed with marriages. Caravans moved through long, dusty roads, carrying goods and stories across landscapes we would barely recognize today. And then, very slowly and then suddenly, this interconnected world dimmed. Centers of power fell quiet. Palaces burned and were abandoned. Trade routes collapsed. Literacy faded. Entire cultures slipped into silence. Tonight we explore this collapse gently, without urgency or tension. We move through these ancient moments as if through a warm dream lit by a quiet fire, observing without fear, learning without pressure. The fire burns softly tonight. You can hear it settling in the hearth, sending out a warm and steady glow that fills the quiet room. Outside, the air is cool, drifting through the cracks of old wooden shutters, carrying the smell of distant fields and the faint echo of animals settling down for the night. This is the world of the late Bronze Age, around 1,200 years before the birth of Christ, a time when great kingdoms still believed their power would last forever. People lived steady lives then, guided by routines that felt ancient even in their own time. Farmers returned from their fields with the slow, tired steps of people who had spent their day under the sun. They set down baskets of barley and wheat, brushed the dust from their clothing, and lit lamps made of bronze and clay. The soft oil flames flickered across walls decorated with simple patterns, casting shadows that moved like quiet spirits. In a home by the eastern Mediterranean, a woman grinds grain on a stone slab. The rhythmic motion is calming, like the hum of the world itself. Across the room, her children lie on woven mats, listening to the crackle of the fire as it mixes with the distant sound of a town settling into darkness. Clay pots sit cooling after the evening meal. A pot of lentils that simmered slowly at sunset still gives off a faint, warm aroma. Further away, down narrow, dusty paths, traders carry their last crates indoors. The day has been long. Merchants have guided donkeys along roads that connect cities across the region. Great bronze-bound wagons rolled earlier through the village square, loaded with goods from far lands. Tin, copper, fine textiles, fragrant oils, carved wood, and small trinkets made by artisans. Even the humblest village feels the reach of distant lands, and people trust that these networks will always continue. In these twilight hours, you would see priests finishing their rituals at local shrines. The smell of incense would still linger, drifting from altars of smooth stone. Offerings of barley cakes, olives, or small carved idols rest beside flickering lamps. The gods feel close here, woven into daily life, and people light their prayers like small flames against the darkness. As night deepens, the world slows. Families lie down on reed mats, wrapped in wool blankets, listening to the nighttime symphony of insects, distant water, and the steady crackle of the hearth. Somewhere beyond the horizon, diplomats are writing letters on clay tablets. Kings are planning trade shipments. Palaces shine under torchlight as scribes move quietly from room to room. Everything feels calm. Everything feels steady. Everything feels like it will last forever. But beneath the quiet surface of this peaceful night, small shifts are already beginning. Ships are changing their routes. Weather is shifting. Faraway tribes are moving. And the great powers of the late Bronze Age, Egypt, the Hittites, Mycenae, Canaan, Ugarit, do not yet know that their world stands on the edge of a slow, silent unraveling. For now, though, the fire glows gently, the air is still, and the people of this age drift into sleep, unaware that their world, so steady and ancient, is entering its final calm moment before the long collapse begins. The night fades slowly across the late Bronze Age world. As dawn approaches, soft blue light spreads over the coastlines, the river valleys, and the mountains where ancient cities rest like scattered jewels. In this calm morning glow, you can see the heart of what made this era so powerful. The vast and delicate web of trade that connected kingdoms across thousands of miles. Along the shore, the waves move gently, brushing the sand in long, steady breaths. Wooden ships rest in harbors, their hulls dark with age and salt. Some are small merchant boats meant for local travel. Others are large, broad-hulled vessels built to cross entire seas. Their sails, rolled and tied for the night, sway lightly with the breeze. The ropes creak in a quiet rhythm that feels almost like the ocean whispering to itself. This world depends on these ships. Without them, the nations of the Bronze Age would fall silent. Copper must come from one land. Tin must come from another. Without both, bronze cannot exist. Armies, tools, art, writing tablets, farming equipment, palaces, temples, and every part of daily life relies on this single metal. It is the thread that holds everything together. As the morning grows brighter, sailors begin to wake. They move slowly at first, stretching their stiff limbs, rubbing their eyes, and stepping onto the cool wooden planks. They speak in low, calm voices as they prepare the ship for another day. The smell of the sea fills the air, mixing with the earthy scent of ropes, pitch, and baskets of goods waiting to be loaded. Merchants arrive carrying clay jars filled with oil and wine. Caravans come down from inland roads with wool, pottery, dyed fabrics, fragrant resins, and carefully crafted bronze tools. Each item tells the story of a world that has grown interconnected and dependent, where a jar from Cyprus might be traded, in Canaan carried to Egypt, copied, Crete, and finally used in a palace hundreds of miles away. In a nearby palace complex, scribes begin their work. They sit at smooth stone tables with clay tablets in front of them. One by one, they press symbols into wet clay with reed styluses. Some tablets record shipments, 20 jars of oil, 12 pieces of worked ivory, 10 rolls of linen, 7 sacks of barley. Others carry diplomatic letters written in the shared international language of the time. These messages travel across kingdoms, requesting shipments, offering gifts, affirming alliances, and solving disputes. This is a world that believes deeply in stability. Kings exchange gifts rather than fight. Queens send fine clothing and perfumes to their allies. Governors request grain shipments from far away to support their cities during lean years. Even ordinary people feel the effects of this vast network. A farmer may carry a bronze tool made from metals mined in 2 different lands. A potter may use a design that came from a distant culture, passed from hand to hand until it became familiar. By midday, markets grow busy. Traders call out gently as they set out their goods, arranging items on low wooden tables. You might see copper ingots shaped like oxhide skins. You might see baskets of dried figs, stacks of painted pottery, and rolls of deep red cloth. People wander through the stalls, examining each item with slow, thoughtful motions. They know how precious these goods are and how far they have traveled. Caravans move along desert paths that shimmer with heat. The sound of wooden wheels grinding across the earth echoes softly through the empty landscape. Donkeys walk in steady lines, their hooves pressing deep into the sand. Each step carries tin, copper, spices, incense, or grain a little farther along one of the many arteries that keep this age alive. In the highlands, shepherds guide flocks of sheep across rocky hillsides. They stop at small villages that dot the landscape, trading wool for pottery or food. Even these seemingly distant communities are part of the great network. Everyone contributes. Everyone receives. It is a world bound together, each region leaning on the others, trusting in the steady rhythm of trade and diplomacy. Yet beneath this calm surface, small cracks are beginning to appear. A shipment arrives late. A caravan does not come through. A coastal city sends a message warning of raids along the shore. A palace accountant notes that 10 deliveries have decreased. These are small changes barely noticed in the flow of daily life, but they hint at deeper shifts taking place across the region. For now, though, the world continues its steady hum. Ships glide out of harbors, sails catching the wind. Merchants close their ledgers and count their goods. Families in distant villages receive items from lands they have never seen. The late Bronze Age still breathes, connected by countless routes that stretch across mountains, deserts, and seas. And through it all, the soft glow of the fireplace in our quiet storytelling. Space reminds you that every part of this ancient world feels close, warm and alive just for a moment before history begins to shift in ways that no one in this age could ever expect. Across the late Bronze Age landscape, a quiet unease begins to settle, almost like a soft fog that drifts in without warning. For centuries, the great powers of this era have depended on one another. Their palaces have grown tall. Their cities have flourished. Their trade routes have stretched farther than ever before. But now, slowly and almost invisibly, the stability that holds everything together begins to loosen. The morning light rises across wide plains, rocky mountains, and gentle coastlines. Farmers step into their fields, carrying wooden tools that glint faintly with bronze edges. The earth beneath them is dry. A thin layer of dust drifts upward with each step they take. Some seasons have been harsher than usual. Rain has grown unpredictable in certain regions. In other places, the heat has lasted longer than expected. The The farmers feel this change in their bones long before anyone in the palace writes it down. In small villages, people gather beside clay ovens as bread bakes slowly, filling the air with a warm and familiar scent. Yet even here, in these quiet places, there are murmurs of things that are different. A caravan arrived late. A shipment of grain was smaller than usual. Traders at the market say that tin, the rare ingredient that powers the entire Bronze Age, is becoming harder to obtain. These are small changes, but they create ripples that spread through the web of trade. Far to the north, in lands that many Bronze Age people have never seen, groups of migrants begin to move. They follow river valleys, forest paths, and ancient tracks carved into the earth. Some travel in search of pasture. Others leave because their homelands have grown unstable. They move slowly, carrying simple belongings on their backs, unaware that their footsteps will echo across an entire age. In the great palaces of the Near East, scribes sit at long wooden tables, shaping clay tablets with careful hands. They record shipments, send messages, and list supplies. But now, new kinds of tablets appear. Messages from vassal states beg for help. Governors request grain because their own fields have failed. Some letters warn of raiders along the coast, ships appearing where none have sailed before. The scribes write these messages with calm, steady strokes, their hands moving with practiced ease, but the meaning behind the words is impossible to ignore. Still, daily life continues. Markets open as the sun climbs higher in the sky. Merchants lay out goods in slow, deliberate motions. Bronze daggers sparkle faintly. Painted pottery gleams in the light. Jars of oil, wine, honey, and resin sit grouped in neat rows. People wander between the stalls, speaking softly about prices, trade, and distant events. No one imagines that these routines might one day become memories. Along the coast, fishermen push their boats into the water. The sea is calm this morning, its surface smooth and silver. The sound of waves brushing against wooden hulls carries a sense of peace. Yet beyond the horizon, strange movements are taking place. Groups of sea raiders begin to gather, drawn by hunger, hardship, or the search for new lands. Their presence is still far from the cities of the great powers, but they move closer with each passing season. In another region, small earthquakes tremble beneath the earth. They shake the stones of temple walls. They rattle storage rooms filled with grain and oil. Most are too mild to cause damage, but they leave people with a sense of unease. Some say these tremors are signs from the gods. Others simply feel the ground beneath them change in ways that make sleep more restless than before. There are also shifts in political ties. A king who once supported his neighbors becomes preoccupied with unrest in his own lands. Another ruler faces a shortage of grain and pulls resources inward. Alliances weaken, not through anger, but through necessity. Diplomatic letters that once carried warm greetings now carry requests for aid, each request heavier than the last. As you drift deeper into this quiet tapestry of events, you can feel how the Bronze Age world remains outwardly calm, yet inwardly strained. It is a world that has grown so interconnected that even small disturbances can spread across vast distances. A missing caravan means a shortage in another land. A poor harvest in one region means fewer shipments to a distant palace. A weakened king leaves a border unprotected, allowing a small group of raiders to slip through. One problem touches another, then another. like a row of clay tablets sliding softly out of place. People continue their routines because they must. Children chase each other through narrow streets. Artisans hammer bronze into tools, each strike ringing clearly against the metal. Potters knead clay with slow, rhythmic motions. Priests offer incense in quiet temples where the smell of smoke rises gently into the air. But beneath all this, the world is changing. The great powers still stand strong, but their foundations are shifting in ways no one fully understands yet. The networks that once felt unbreakable now feel slightly strained. The trade routes that carried wealth now carry warnings. And the people who once trusted in the stability of their world now sense that something vast and silent is beginning to move. For now, though, the ancient world remains peaceful in the soft glow of our fireplace ambience. The story continues slowly, gently, guiding you deeper into the mystery of how such a powerful and interconnected civilization could begin to unravel long before its collapse becomes clear. The late Bronze Age stretches before us like a wide tapestry, woven with threads of trade, diplomacy, and ancient tradition. Yet now, some of those threads begin to fray, not through sudden violence or a single catastrophic event, but through a chain of small pressures that gather and deepen over time. These pressures spread quietly, almost gently, yet their effects slowly reshape everything. As the sun rises over the ancient landscape, the fields reveal their struggle. The soil looks lighter, almost gray in places, where it once held deep, rich color. Farmers kneel to touch the earth, letting it sift through their fingers. It falls like dust rather than soil prepared for planting. The rains have been uncertain for several seasons. Some years they arrive too late. Some years they fall too hard. Others they do not come at all. The delicate balance of the environment begins to shift. Water sources that once flowed steadily now shrink. Wells require deeper digging. Rivers run lower. The edges of ponds dry and crack. Animals wander farther to find grass. In some regions, dryness stretches so widely that entire communities pack their belongings onto wooden carts and begin to move. They travel east or west, following old paths, hoping to find more reliable land. These migrations are slow and heavy, carried out with quiet determination rather than dramatic flight. But as they move, they place new pressures on the regions they enter. The great kingdoms rely on predictable food supplies to support their large populations and powerful armies. When harvests falter, everything becomes more delicate. Grain, the heart of Bronze Age life, becomes scarce in certain places. Storage rooms that once overflowed with sacks of wheat now stand half empty. Palace administrators count and recount supplies, their clay tablets filled with numbers that grow more concerning each season. In bustling markets, the atmosphere shifts. The air still carries the familiar mix of pottery, smoke, and fresh bread, but prices begin to change. A handful of barley now costs slightly more. An olive jar now reflects scarcity in the lands where olives once flourished. People speak of this quietly while examining goods, lowering their voices as if unwilling to disturb the fragile balance of their lives. Caravans feel the strain, too. A merchant who once carried copper from Cyprus now struggles to obtain tin. Without tin, bronze becomes impossible to create. Tools, weapons, and ornaments that once flowed across the region now become more difficult to replace. In workshops, craftsmen sharpen old tools rather than make new ones. They melt down damaged items to reuse whatever metal they can recover. The Bronze Age, built on the union of copper and tin, finds its very foundation becoming unstable. Meanwhile, winds begin to shift across the Mediterranean. Some scientists believe volcanic events may have contributed to cooler weather in parts of the world. Whether through such changes or through long natural cycles, the climate becomes unpredictable enough to unsettle everything linked to it. At the same time, far to the north and west, groups of people begin their own migrations. They travel in scattered groups, carrying simple wooden shields and long spears. Some come seeking new land. Others come because their old land has changed in ways they can no longer manage. As they move closer to the thriving kingdoms of the Near East, they create new pressures on borders that were once secure. In coastal towns, another kind of tension brews. Villagers speak of strange ships sighted on the horizon. These are not the familiar merchant ships that glide across the sea with painted sails and neatly tied cargo. These are rougher vessels with unfamiliar designs, filled with people who move differently, speak differently, and carry ambitions far from home. Some ships approach quietly. Others land in sudden bursts of activity. They are not yet a united force, but their presence hints at future storms. Inside the palaces, rulers receive messages carved into soft clay tablets. These tablets report failing harvests, weakened defenses, and border tensions. Some letters are filled with polite appeals for help. Others contain panic thinly disguised behind formal greetings. A few rulers respond with what aid they can spare. Others are stretched too thin to intervene. And so the network that once connected the great powers begins to flicker with uncertainty. Still, life continues with the same quiet rhythms. In temples, priests offer incense, their chants echoing through cool stone halls. In small workshops, artisans carve ivory, shape pottery, and weave textiles. In vineyards, workers gently prune grapevines in hopes of coaxing a better harvest next season. These routines bring comfort, but they take place in a world slowly shifting beneath their feet. Even the sea begins to feel different. Fishermen notice that certain fish are less common than usual. Storms appear out of season. The water levels near certain ports shift subtly. Sailors whisper about routes becoming unpredictable, not enough to stop travel, but enough to unsettle those who know the sea best. All these forces build quietly, without urgency or immediate catastrophe. Yet together they form the beginnings of a slow crisis. A crisis that spreads across borders, across seas, across every corner of the interconnected world. Each kingdom depends heavily on another. When one falters, all feel the tremor. When several falter at once, the entire system begins to lean and strain. As the soft glow of our imagined fire continues to warm the space around you, the late Bronze Age stands at a delicate point. Still beautiful, still rich with culture and tradition, still alive with song, trade, work, and ritual. But beneath the surface, everything grows more fragile. This is the quiet crisis, the kind that moves slowly, calmly, almost invisibly, yet has the power to reshape an age. The world of the late Bronze Age continues to move with a quiet steadiness, but now the tensions from earlier years begin to deepen. Not with loud events, but with soft tremors that ripple through villages, palaces, workshops, and ports. We are still in a time of gentle routines and familiar rhythms, Yet now every day carries hints that something has begun to shift. Clay tablets, baked and preserved, carry the clearest echoes of this change. They are found in archives tucked safely inside palace walls, where scribes work in long rows, each scribe seated on a low stool. Lamps glow softly beside them, casting warm light across wet clay. The stylus makes a steady tapping sound, each mark forming symbols that tell stories of requests, worries, and unfolding problems. Some letters arrive from distant vassal states. They are written in the same diplomatic style used for generations. The introduction is formal, the greetings are respectful. But once the courtesies fade, the messages reveal concerns. Supplies have been delayed, caravans have not arrived, crops have failed, borders are unsettled. A small town requests grain from a neighboring ally. Another asks for troops to strengthen a weakening frontier. A third politely begs for help, noting that the situation is already becoming severe. In earlier times, these requests would have been answered swiftly. The networks between kingdoms were strong, built from centuries of cooperation. But now, rulers read these tablets with quiet unease. They pass them to advisors who stand in contemplative silence before answering. Resources are thin. Armies are stretched. Treasury stores do not hold what they once did. The normal chains of support, once fluid and dependable, begin to stutter. Meanwhile, traders still sail across the sea, but their journeys become more uncertain. Their ships glide over waters that feel a little quieter than before. Ports that once bustled with activity now show signs of strain. In one harbor, only a few ships rest against the docks, their ropes swaying gently with the movement of the tide. Warehouses stand partially empty. Workers wait longer for new shipments that do not arrive. The sea still connects the kingdoms, but each season brings more unpredictability. In a quiet coastal town, a merchant climbs a hill to look out at the water, hoping to see a familiar ship with goods from a distant ally. He waits as the sun moves across the sky, listening to gulls and the soft waves brushing against the shore. When the horizon remains empty, he slowly returns home, carrying the weight of uncertainty on his shoulders. In inland cities, artisans feel a different pressure. Metal workers depend on a steady supply of copper and tin to create bronze. But tin especially becomes difficult to obtain. Craftsmen gather in workshops filled with soft shadows and warm lamplight. They examine their dwindling stock of metal. They handle old tools and damaged weapons, deciding which ones can be melted and reforged. The world that has long relied on bronze now faces the limits of its own foundation. In some palaces, rulers hold council meetings in long, columned halls. Advisors speak softly, careful not to alarm those who already fear the changes unfolding. Maps cover wooden tables, each region marked with clay figurines that show allies, enemies, and trade routes. The discussions stretch late into the evenings. They examine the droughts. They discuss migrating groups along the borders. They question the stability of distant allies. They speak of new arrivals on the sea, mysterious groups who seem to move from place to place without clear origin or purpose. Some rulers remain calm, trusting that the world will adjust. Others feel a quiet dread, but they all sense the weight of change. In small villages, the signs of strain move quietly through everyday life. A weaver works at her loom, noticing that wool from her flock is thinner this season. A potter shapes clay with practiced hands, But the kiln does not fire as evenly as before, because wood is becoming harder to gather. Farmers gather to discuss new planting methods. Elders remember years of hardship from long ago and offer soft advice. People adapt as best they can, but the sense of ease that once filled the era begins to fade. At night, families sit around small oil lamps, sharing stories and bread. They speak of past harvests, of festivals, of seasons that felt more predictable. They speak gently, without fear, but with the awareness that their world has begun to shift in ways they do not fully understand. The stars above them remain steady, but the ground beneath their lives feels less certain than before. Trade routes grow thinner. Letters become more urgent. Villages swell with newcomers seeking better land. Borders bend beneath pressure. The kingdoms still stand, but they stand quietly, waiting, hoping for stability to return. This part of the story is not dramatic. It is subtle. It is slow. It is the gentle dimming of an age, like embers cooling in a hearth. The world is holding its breath. Something large is beginning, though no one alive in this moment can yet see the full shape of what approaches. The late Bronze Age lingers in a fragile stillness, as if the entire region senses a coming shift, but cannot name it. The air grows heavier. The atmosphere grows tense. The ancient world stands at the edge of a change that will move slowly at first, and then all at once change everything. The world now moves in a softer rhythm, as civilizations of the late Bronze Age, which for centuries had thrived, now face a quiet unraveling. This is not sudden, not loud, but gradual, like the dimming of sunlight behind a heavy cloud. Palaces stand, but some halls are emptier. Markets exist, but fewer traders arrive. The hum of daily life continues, but with a subtle emptiness that those living it can feel in the small moments, the silent streets, the half-full granaries, the slow reply to letters from distant allies. In the villages, the ordinary routines of life carry on, though everything feels slightly more strained. Children still play in open courtyards, their laughter soft against the wind. Farmers tend to fields, noticing smaller harvests and harder soil. They adjust, slowly shifting methods, planting different seeds, moving livestock to new pastures. Elders watch these changes carefully, offering advice drawn from memories of earlier cycles of hardship. Even in quiet suffering, life continues with a gentle, persistent pulse. Along the trade routes, caravans travel more cautiously. Merchants take note of abandoned outposts along the way. They share quiet stories of missed shipments and delayed contacts, recounting them in low voices by the fires of inns and taverns. At ports, ships still move across the water, but fewer in number. Sailors watch the horizon for familiar sails that do not appear. The sea itself remains calm, yet its once predictable pathways now feel uncertain. In the royal courts, rulers meet with their advisors in halls that smell faintly of oil lamps and aged wood. They review maps that show shifting allegiances and missing allies. They read letters that speak of shortages, migration, and unrest in distant lands. Decisions are made carefully, each step measured, because the usual confidence in the smooth functioning of kingdoms has begun to falter. Even the strongest monarchs feel the quiet anxiety of knowing that the structures they relied upon are under pressure. Temples and sacred sites continue to draw worshippers, though in smaller numbers. Priests light incense and offer quiet prayers, their voices low and calm, asking for protection and guidance. In towns and villages, small ceremonies are held with families participating, keeping traditions alive. There is a sense that the gods watch these changes with a gentle patience, that the spiritual world remains a source of comfort, even as the physical world shifts. Artisans in their workshops still craft beautiful objects, though materials are harder to acquire. Bronze is scarce, fine wood more difficult to find. Yet the creativity of these individuals adapts. They repurpose, they innovate, they stretch limited resources into tools and adornments. The soft tapping of hammers, the warm glow of kilns, and the rhythmic motion of looms fill small workshops with life, even in a time when larger systems falter. Night falls across these lands with a quiet finality. Families gather in simple homes, around fires or lamps, sharing modest meals. They tell stories of heroes and gods, of harvests past and traditions that carry through the generations. The laughter of children, the soft murmurs of parents, the occasional bark of a dog, all blend into a gentle symphony of ordinary life, continuing against the backdrop of an age fading. And as the darkness deepens, the late Bronze Age civilizations slowly slip into the quieter pages of history. Palaces, temples, and markets may stand, but many crumble in silence over time. Trade networks shrink, alliances fade, and cities once vibrant with energy grow quieter. Yet in this calm collapse there is also continuity. Knowledge is preserved in clay tablets, pottery, and oral stories. Craftsmanship continues in workshops. Rituals and customs are maintained by families. Though the old world dims, its legacy will travel forward into the cultures that rise in the wake of its passing. The collapse itself is a whisper, not a roar. It is seen in the absence of what once was taken for granted. Fewer ships in the harbors, thinner harvests, quieter. Markets, longer waits for letters to arrive, and a faint sense of fragility in the systems that once seemed eternal. People adapt as best they can, quietly persevering, always finding ways to maintain their daily lives amid uncertainty. And so the late Bronze Age comes to its final hours in a soft, immersive rhythm, a gentle drift into change. The civilizations do not vanish all at once. Instead, they fade in stages, leaving behind traces that will inspire and inform the generations to come. The hum of life continues, slower, softer, but still present, a reminder that even as eras end, human resilience and adaptation endure. This is the quiet end of an age. The world pauses, breathes, and shifts into the next chapter of human history. We close this long exploration with a calm farewell, a gentle acknowledgement of the lives that persisted, the knowledge that survived, and the world that continues to turn beneath the stars. Sleep now as the late Bronze Age settles into history. Good night, and may your dreams carry you gently through time, across lands once filled with bustling cities, quiet villages, and the slow, enduring rhythm of human life.